The Arab American community is on high alert because of a hateful flyer that is circulating. The flyer promotes April 3rd as Punish a Muslim Day and encourages violence against Muslims with...
This is the letter that was posted to Muslim homes in the cities of London, Leicester, Bradford and Cardiff. Its origins remain a mystery, but its message is clear. Hurt Muslims on April the 3rd, 2018.
This letter, so you can get that up for you, has been sent to households across the UK last month. It declares that April 3rd should be Punish a Muslim Day.
There is a worrying trend of fake news in the age of social media. Social media definitely has its ups, but of course it has its massive downs as well. And going into these platforms with gullibility or an agenda that cares less about facts and more about propping up one's position greatly increases the odds of spreading harmful misinformation. Now, before I move on any further, let me say that bigotry against Muslims, as well as against nearly everyone else by Muslims or non-Muslims, is a real thing. Do some Muslims face some abuse in non-Muslim countries? Yes. Equally, do some non-Muslims face some abuse in Muslim countries? Yes. Is it in equal proportion? No. But this isn't about how many non-Muslims get abused in the Muslim world and comparing that with how many Muslims are abused in the West. All cases of such abuse are to be condemned and stamped out. But what we must also condemn are fabricated stories or needlessly exaggerated stories, produced simply to drive an agenda. On March the 9th of this year, 2018, a Twitter user by the name of Ruwaida Abdelaziz published this tweet. Punish a Muslim Day letters are being sent to families in East London. The letter details a point system for each action and a reward. For example, pulling a Muslim woman's hijab is 25 points, throwing acid is 50 points, and burning or bombing a mosque is a whole 1,000 points. The letter shown by this tweet has looked incredibly fishy from the first minute I saw it. I'll explain why soon. I'm uploading this on the alleged day of action for this letter, as it's now back in the news. I initially wanted to put out a video at the time this was going viral, as it seemed skepticism had been thrown completely out the window, especially when we've seen so many false alarms in the past. But instead, I thought it was best to wait and let the police investigate this to see if we hear about this being verified as some form of far-right plot. The police have since, as I expected, said it's not a credible threat at all, and that they don't expect any attacks, but will try to reassure Muslim communities regardless to help allay their fears. An Evening Standard report this week quoted the police as saying, "A spokesman for the Met Police told the Standard that there is no credible information that any hate crimes will happen on Tuesday." It goes on to add, the Met said they had received a report of a physical copy of the letter being sent to an East London address, and one report from a person in southwest London who received a copy of the note through WhatsApp. Meanwhile, West Yorkshire Police has confirmed it received around 6 reports, again, notice reports, not evidence of letters, all it is reports at this stage, of letters advertising Punish a Muslim Day, and said counter-terrorism police were investigating. Tell Mama said it received 20 reports, again reports, of physical letters being received in total, mostly at residential addresses in Leicester, Bradford and East London, bearing the same postmark from Sheffield. The letter in question is an A4 print of a single piece of paper placed on a wooden desk or wooden floor. This image was being used by everyone as proof that this was a systematic campaign, yet we haven't seen other pictures of this supposed letter, despite a few reports of similar letters being received, even though no one else seems to have uploaded any other images of any other letters. I've seen one other image, but judging by where the creases are and the direction of those creases, it appears to be certain that it's the same A4 print as the original picture on the wooden floor. So let's read the letter, because if you read this letter you'll realise that A, it's written by absolute morons, whoever they are, and as a result doesn't deserve any public attention at all, as those behind it likely can't even tie their own shoelaces. And more incredibly, B, the alleged origin of this letter is supposed to be the British government. So we're supposed to believe that what we're about to read was an instruction by the British government. How this has evaded the thousands and thousands of people who have shared this and numerous publications and public figures who have shared this is beyond me. Anyway, the letter says, Punish a Muslim Day, 3rd of April 2018. They have hurt you. They have made your loved ones suffer. They have caused you pain and heartache. What are you going to do about it? Are you a sheep like the vast majority of the population? Sheep follows orders and are easily led. They are allowing the white majority nations of Europe and North America to become overrun by those who would like nothing more than to do us harm and turn our democracies into Sharia-led police states. Only you can help turn this thing around. Only you have the power. Do not be a sheep. So far we have a tacky printout which has a message which sounds like it's written by a far-right lunatic, and equally, it's so cliche it could have been written by anyone who wants to make it look like something written by the far right. So this part alone isn't obviously showing it to be fake. It's tacky and it's dumb, but that's all we can say so far. Then we go on to the ridiculous points rewards. This is so juvenile that it should ring alarm bells to anyone reading this. What is this childish points system? 10 points for verbally abusing a Muslim, 25 points for pulling off someone's headscarf, 50 for throwing acid into someone's face, 100 to beat up a Muslim, 250 points to torture a Muslim using electrocution, skinning, use of Iraq. Are we supposed to believe that all these crazy right-wingers have torture chambers where they skin people for 250 points? It's beyond absurd. This is showing that whoever is writing this is trying their best to make this sound as horrible as they can. Then 500 points for butchering a Muslim using any weapon. Then 1,000 points for burning or bombing a mosque. So you get less points for murder and torture than for arson, according to this dumb points system. And finally 2,500 points to nuke Mecca. And by this point it's really obviously crap. Do far-right individuals have access to nuclear weapons? Is Terry the Islamophobe going for the jackpot reward as he orders his nuke from Amazon? How any of this is taken seriously is simply astonishing. It's obviously a pile of crap that deserves zero attention, but what we got was a huge public scaremongering campaign and countless hours of wasted time for counter-terrorism police units who can spend their time on far more pressing issues. And if anyone was still thinking that it might be true, the last line gives it away incredibly clearly. It tells us who to contact if we have any further inquiries. Well, maybe somebody wants to know whether waterboarding counts as torture, for example, and whether they can get 250 points for it. Or maybe somebody wants to know how badly they would need to beat up a Muslim to get 100 points. Anyway, we are given an address to inquire further on this ridiculous point system. It reads, "For further inquiries, please contact HM Courts and Tribunals Service, 102 Petit France, London SW1H 9AJ. Yes, that's right, this whole letter is supposed to be from the British government's Justice Department. Just insert that address into Google Maps and see what comes up for yourself. That alone should show you without any doubt that it's fake. My guess would be that it was probably written by a Muslim keen to show you that they are victims of this dirty British infidel government, to try and tell other Muslims that the evil government itself is handing out imaginary points for people who go and harm Muslims in Britain on a one-day special this year. So taking this crap seriously means you've either never read the letter properly, or believe the British government is conspiring by asking its citizens to carry out a Muslim-exclusive purge on a totally random day. Maybe you think when Ruwaida posts this to help serve the victimhood narrative, that it will be quickly pointed out to her that it's obviously just a crap piece of A4 paper that's suggesting there's a government conspiracy to murder Muslims in Britain, and that she would realise this, especially as she's supposed to be a journalist at the Huffington Post who also previously worked for Al Jazeera Arabic, admittedly two organisations who don't have great track records. Though, given some very basic common sense, the tweet should have been taken down and that would have been the end of it. But unfortunately, we live in a world where victimhood narratives sell. Apparently nowadays, one poorly constructed A4 printout that is written by a person with an IQ lower than that of a pineapple is enough evidence to give this piece of paper so much oxygen and to propel it into the spotlight. Not only is this enough evidence for those victimhood narrative specialists out there like Ruwaida, but even for British lawmakers like Yasmin Qureshi, Jess Phillips, Yvette Cooper, and Naz Shah in a small sample of political reaction to this. Though the worst came with an actual government cabinet member called Sajid Javid, who also claimed to have received the letter, but all he did was crop the original single picture online and claimed that it was another copy sent to him. It's quite embarrassing that not only is this government figure joining in to maximise the reach of such fake news, but willingly playing an additional role in copying the original image of the letter and trying to claim it was another one sent to him, folded in exactly the same places and placed on the exact same wooden surface too. And apparently it's also enough evidence for journalists at the BBC, Al Jazeera, The Independent, The Guardian, Sky News, The Daily Mirror, The Evening Standard, and many more in Britain and across the world to make this single piece of paper into an international story, terrifying hundreds of thousands if not millions of Muslims in the process, and giving a lot more ammunition for those who seek to drive a victimhood narrative to conflate this nonsense with criticism of Islam as an ideology, and silence the needed discussion on the dangers stemming from certain Islamic scriptures in the process. How an A4 printout alleging the UK government Justice Department is handing out points to people who can harm Muslims in any way gains this much traction is pretty horrifying for the state of fact-checking at what used to be respectable media outlets. We're used to the general public sharing crap like this, but when politicians and mainstream news media outlets jump on board without doing very basic research on the topic, it's simply shocking. Now, when this went viral, I sent a few messages on Twitter to some of the journalists behind these articles, because I believe in accountability and that people should be checking their stories and called out when they've not done the research. And the Evening Standard and Daily Mirror journalists were the first two I spotted, and I've politely pointed out to them that this letter is basically saying that the ridiculous points rewards for harming Muslims is supposedly stemming from the British government. And almost a month later, I've not had a response from these journalists, nor has any story been retracted. I've also noticed that nearly all the articles and even the origin of that viral tweet all claim that this is being reported by an organisation called Tell Mama, which works to highlight every instance of anti-Muslim abuse it can find and make a long list of it. They've been extremely quick to retweet claims of abuse without any evidence to substantiate them in the past, and I'm not entirely confident that they've changed their approach to be more rigorous before spreading misinformation of alleged abuse. Incidentally, I also reached out to them in a very polite manner to see whether their multiple reports ever produced any images of other letters by people across the country, which could of course go some way to proving that this is not just an isolated one piece of A4 paper, or maybe 2 or 3 at most, far fewer than what would merit the huge reaction this piece of paper got. But again, as I expected, they've not provided any such evidence. In fact, they blocked me simply for asking whether they had any evidence for this. These were the tweets that got me blocked. Judge for yourself whether I was abusive, or whether they just blocked out of fear that someone dared ask for evidence to hold them accountable for the misinformation they are helping to spread. Unfortunately, this isn't new. Tell Mama has long been responsible for spreading a lot of misinformation, which is needlessly terrifying Muslims who are now probably scared to venture out on the 3rd of April. And unfortunately, they've given this bullshit letter so much exposure for the sake of pouring more fuel on the victimhood complex that actual far-right bigots may genuinely start to organise themselves in this way and look to potentially act on it. It's utterly shameful that human lives could now be endangered needlessly. It's also strange why it's only Muslims who seem to be receiving these letters. If the purpose of this so-called campaign is to recruit far-right criminals to attack Muslims, why not send it to them, or at the very least, to non-Muslim households? Why are they only sending to Muslim households if they're obviously not going to join in? If the goal of that is to spread fear, well done. Now you've done all that anyway, on a much larger scale by thrusting this tacky A4 printout into the spotlight and making it into an issue. Time will only tell if we'll ever get to the bottom of who was behind this, and it shouldn't be too difficult. But I hope the authorities stamp down on people who are behind things like this, and also stamp down on all the people making all these false claims, wasting valuable police time and resources that can be put to much better use. Tell Mama and other organisations like it also need to be held accountable for the needless terror they're causing the community they're supposed to be protecting. So in future they don't spread such harmful misinformation simply because it serves their political agenda. Incidentally, on the very same day that this tweet went viral, a scientific study spanning 12 years was published in Science Journal. It looked at how false information spread much quicker than information that was verifiably true. The LA Times reported this and said, compared to tweets about claims that were verifiably true, tweets about claims that were undeniably false were 70% more likely to be retweeted in the Twitterverse. This is all very unfortunate because there are legitimate cases of this kind of bigotry, but spreading false information has a negative effect on the actual victims and in future might make us more complacent with genuine threats, as we'll begin to treat them all as cases of the boy who cried wolf too many times. All these lies and false stories will naturally make us more and more skeptical to the actual threats, and we might not treat them with the resources and attention they deserve. But for now, it seems a single tacky piece of A4 paper is enough to jeopardize credibility that sometimes takes years to develop. When will we learn from these mistakes? The usual suspects who are always trigger happy in driving forward the victimhood narrative were the same ones who spread the false stories about the hijab girl in Canada and many others like it. This misinformation can apply to Muslims and also non-Muslims, by the way. False news spreading like wildfire can go both ways. We all remember some of the tweets Trump retweeted in the not so distant past were proven false, and there are plenty of examples of crap like that dominating another part of the internet. But it's time we all stop to think about the repercussions of our own actions and hold those who don't accountable.